Howdy, and welcome to the final day of Texas A&M's Virtual Earth Month. Hopefully you're like, let me make sure you're looking at the right screen here. Sorry, I just had a few hiccups here in the office. We're getting back on track, but welcome. Very happy for you to join us today. This is the last talk in our virtual talk series. You've seen 4 previous ones to this one, and today we're going to be wrapping things up, learning more about renewable energy. So all of our talks have been about climate change. We know that climate change is one of the biggest problems that's facing us, something that we definitely have to work together to solve. Then the whole theme of what we've been talking about is that by working together, we really can save ourselves. We can have a sustainable future, but it's going to take all of us working together to achieve this. And one of the things that we definitely have to do is utilize renewable energy. So that's what this talk is going to be about. It's going to be talking about a renewable future, and that we still can have a sustainable future if we take action now. So I'm really excited to learn about that. We have Emilia Gamez, Emilia Flores, and Maddie Farrell here to talk to you today about reaching for renewables. And just before we get into that talk, just real quickly, put your presentation view into side-by-side mode on Zoom, the best way to view this presentation. The live transcript is enabled, so you can see that if you prefer. Please ask us questions in the chat. We'll make things more interesting. And also, this is being recorded, so just so you are aware, this is being recorded. And you're probably here because you're looking for code words. That may be one of the reasons you're here. We're giving away some amazing prizes. If you are here at this final talk, you already know all of the rules. But if you do need to see them, again, you can see them everything at our website, sustainability.tamu.edu. You can see the link here on this final page. If you want to go check out the rules and learn about all the prizes, go look at that. I don't want to take your time up again talking about that today. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Emilia, and Maddie, and they are going to talk to us about renewable energy. So ladies, whenever you're ready, you can take over the screen share.
Hi, so like Ben said, we'll be presenting to you guys today. My name is Emilia Gamez, and I am a freshman business major.
I'm Maddie Farrell. I'm a junior environmental geoscience major.
And I'm Emilia Flores, a class of 2024 and environmental studies major.
So our topic today is reaching for renewables and why the transition to renewables needs to happen now. So one of the main issues that our generation today is facing is climate change. And then if you see on the next slide, we have a graph and it shows the CO2 levels today, or the CO2 levels, and there's been natural cycles with the CO2 levels, and then all of a sudden there's a huge spike in CO2. So the CO2 levels today are higher than they have been in the past 800,000 years, and one such reason for that is because of fossil fuel emissions. So fossil fuels such as coal and oil are greenhouse gases, and because of the properties of a greenhouse gas, they absorb a lot of heat, and this is usually good because it keeps the Earth's heat levels at a pretty livable level. But because CO2 levels have gotten to a point where they're so high, then the Earth is gradually warming, and we can see the effects of this on the next slide. So the first graph shows the global average surface temperatures, and the blue lines are cooler than average years, while the red lines are warmer than average years. And you can see that from the 1980s, we've only had warmer than average years, and every year they're continually getting hotter and hotter. And then the second graph shows the 10 hottest global years on record, and every single year has been from 2005 onward. So the heat that we're seeing is unprecedented. It's continually getting warmer and warmer. There is a solution to this though, and transitioning to renewable energy will help solve this problem. So I'm going to pass it on to Maddie.
All right, so I'll be discussing the environmental impacts of renewable energy. So these are the different types of renewable energy. And on this graph, we can see here, these are all the energy sources or the main energy sources used in the United States. So you can see on your left that only about 12% of our energy in the United States comes from renewable energy sources. So the 5 main types used in the US include biomass, which is the use of organic matter, which can be burned or turned into a liquid fuel. Hydropower, which is the use of fast running water or falling water to produce electricity or to power machines. Wind energy uses turbines, which convert the kinetic energy of wind into mechanical or electrical energy that can be used for power. And solar power uses panels that convert sunlight into electrical energy. And geothermal energy is heat within the earth, and that heat is then used to produce energy. And then on the right side, you can see all the fossil fuels listed, which come from dead plants and animals over the years, and we have been able to extract them and use them for energy sources. And then if we go to the next slide, we can see that, as Emilia talked about, not only do renewable energy sources reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but they're actually more energy efficient, which means that we're having to put less energy in and we're getting more out of it. We don't have to extract renewable energy sources like we do with coal and oil and natural gas. So you can see here, wind energy is very efficient. It's the most efficient energy source. So yeah, they're just all more efficient as a whole than fossil fuels. And then if we go to the next slide, just renewables are great as a whole because they can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So energy-related carbon dioxide emissions represent 2/3 of all greenhouse gases. And renewable energy and the energy efficiency that renewables bring have the ability to achieve 94% of required emission reductions needed by 2050, which is a common goal for net zero carbon emissions into the atmosphere. So with the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, pollutant emissions also are reduced, which therefore reduces health issues, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And it also reduces job insecurity because more jobs are provided with the renewable energy market. And as I talked about on the last slide, it also reduces the use of inefficient energy sources. So we're just getting more from renewable energy sources than we are from fossil fuels. And with that, I'll pass it on to Emilia to talk about the Green New Deal and how that works with climate change and renewable energy.
So first off, I'm going to start with the history of the Green New Deal. So the Green Deal is a conscious reference to President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal program in 1930s America. The amount of legislation passed by FDR's administration in its first 100 days is remembered as bringing about decisive state spending in support of some of America's poorest people. The New Deal is often considered as a central political moment in America's history, having pulled out the United States out of the Great Depression. Is there a precedent for the government to make economic interventions during domestic and even foreign crises, providing basic securities for its citizens, such as pensions? The term Green New Deal was first used by Pulitzer Prize winner Thomas Friedman in January 2007. At that point, America experienced its hottest year on record. Friedman recognized the easy solution to climate change politicians hoped for wasn't possible. It was going to take money, effort, and upsetting an industry that is always generous with campaign contributions. The following year, presidential candidate Barack Obama added a Green New Deal to his platform. In 2009, the United Nations drafted a report calling for a global Green New Deal to focus government stimulus on renewable energy projects. A month later, Democrats' landmark cap-and-trade bill, which is meant to set up a market where companies could buy and sell pollution permits and take a conservative first step towards limiting carbon dioxide emissions, passed in the House with the promise of spurring $150 billion in clean energy investments and creating 1.7 million good-paying jobs. But by 2010, the cap-and-trade bill, known as the American Clean Energy and Security Act, died in the Senate. President Biden's existing goals are to create a carbon pollution-free power sector by 2035 and net zero emission economy by no later than 2050. And so continuing, I will start talking about Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Ed Markey, who is a Democratic Party member of Massachusetts, introduced a 14-page non-binding resolution in Congress in February 2019, calling for the federal government to create a Green New Deal. The resolution had more than 100 co-sponsors in Congress and attracted a number of Democratic presidential candidates during the election. But politicians have known about climate change and the idea of a Green New Deal for years. This is the most detailed plan presented to the American people to transform the economy, even though it is extremely vague and acts as a set of principles and goals rather than the specific policies. According to the resolution, the US must lead the way to reduce emissions. That's because of its technological advancement and historical contribution to the disproportionate amount of greenhouse gas emissions that you can see in the next slide. So here's a video where it basically shows you the timeline of how the US became one of the largest CO2 emissions emitter. And at 20.3% of the global total, this is by far the largest share, and it's associated with some 0.2 Celsius increase of warming to date. So what is in the Green New Deal? The Green New Deal is a congressional resolution that lays out a grand plan for tackling climate change. It plans to meet 100% of power demand in the country through clean, renewable, and zero-emission energy sources by 2050. Climate change and inequality are inextricably linked. We cannot tackle one without addressing the other. A Green New Deal would take on both. To tackle the climate crisis at the speed that justice and science demand, a Green New Deal will upgrade our infrastructure, revitalize our energy system, retrofit our buildings, and restore our ecosystems. In so doing, a Green New Deal will cut climate pollution while creating millions of family-sustaining jobs, expanding access to clean air and water, raising wages, and building climate resilience. To counteract inequality, those benefits will go first and foremost to the working-class families and communities of color that have endured the brunt of the fossil fuel economy. So what is the aim of the Green New Deal? The aim of the Green New Deal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in order to avoid the worst consequences of climate change, while also trying to fix societal problems like economic inequality and racial injustice. Some of the goals that the Green New Deal includes investing in renewable power sources, building or upgrading to energy efficient, distributed, and smart power grids to provide affordable electricity, providing investments and leveraging funding to help communities affected by climate change, identifying unknown sources of pollution and emissions, and investing in manufacturing and industry to spur growth in the use of clean energy. So, I'm sorry, for some reason, okay, I'm so sorry about that. I decided to go to another slide, which I don't know what happened. But how much would it cost? We must remember that the Green New Deal is a set of ambitions, not policies, and how much things cost will depend on what the policies are. When the plan was first unrolled, congressional Republicans threw out an exaggerated figure of $93 trillion, which discouraged many from supporting the Green New Deal. In actuality, it could cost anywhere from about 50 trillion to 90 trillion, while other experts told us the Green New Deal is too big to try to estimate its cost. As the planet warms, we won't just lose more beachfront property to rising seas and more riverfront property to rising rivers. And increasing air pollution will cause an increase in hospitalizations. Bridges and roads will buckle and melt under rising temperatures. The agriculture industry will wither under more frequent, more severe droughts. Wildfires will burn hotter and longer and further encroach on urban areas. All of this is already costing us money. The annual cost of climate change by 2090 in today's dollars include 26 billion in losses due to worsened air quality, 140 billion for temperature-related deaths, 160 billion lost in labor, and 120 billion in coastal property damage. That's 146 billion, and that is just the beginning. So now I'm going to be passing it on to Maddie.
All right, so I'll be talking about the social benefits of renewable energy. Emilia touched a little bit on that with the Green New Deal, but I'll just further that conversation. So if we could go to the next slide. So the Sustainable Development Goals are a collection of 17 interlinked global global goals designed to be a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. So these were created in 2015 by the United Nations General Assembly and are intended to be achieved by 2030. So that's coming up. And renewable energy fits into the 7th Sustainable Development Goal, which is to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. And the potential contribution of renewable energy to decarbonize the power sector is immense and just really fits in well with this goal for sustainable development. So if we could go to the next slide. As I touched on a little bit earlier, renewables are good for our health as they reduce pollutant emissions. So as we can see in the middle of this graph, there's 3 large pollution emissions that come from fossil fuels. These cause things like lung cancer and just are not great for our health overall. So renewables will reduce these emissions and just be better for our health. And as you can see at the towards the bottom of the graph, it shows like the equivalent of the economic benefit for health and all that. But air pollution accounts for 1 in 9 deaths globally, and it is estimated to have contributed to 6.67 million deaths worldwide in 2019. So renewables would prevent these unnecessary deaths happening from pollutant emissions. So it's just really important for our health also to have renewable energy. And then if we could go to the next slide. Renewable energy also provides jobs. So this graphic shows how many jobs it can provide globally, a lot of that being in the solar energy sector, as you can see by the different colors and types. But in 2019, more than 755,000 people were employed in the renewable energy sector in the US, compared with only 83.8 thousand workers in the fossil fuel generation sector. So renewable energy provides jobs, even more jobs than the fossil fuel industry. So it's just much better for job security and our society as a whole to make it more sustainable. And with that, I'll pass it on to Emilia with the economics of renewable energy.
So I'm going to be talking to you about the economics. The demand for energy is only going to increase. So it shows that the demand will be up about 15% in 2050 from 2019. And then we know that the supply is only going to be decreasing for fossil fuels because we have a finite amount of that. It's also predicted that oil and natural gas will run out by 2042. Or 2047. So we won't have that supply. So we'll need to find energy elsewhere. And the best bet is to find energy in renewable energy sources. And then if we go on to the next slide, it shows the cost of building electric power plants, and it's the levelized cost of electricity in US dollars. So you can see that hydropower, natural gas baseload, solar, and wind are by far the cheapest. Natural gas baseload, coal, and natural gas peaker are the only fossil fuels listed. And you can see that a lot of the renewable energies are just as cost efficient, if not more cost efficient. And then if we go on to the next slide, I can go over the cost of transitioning. So it's just a matter of switching our focus. We're going to be needing to pay for energy, and so we might as well be putting our energy into renewables rather than fossil fuels. And then with that, the jobs in the fossil fuel industry will be shut down, but then there'll be so much more job openings in the renewable energy. And like Maddie said, it's going to be like 11 billion new jobs in that energy sector. So it's just a matter of switching our focus. And then with that, there's no additional cost to renewable energies. So if you have solar panels on your house or wind turbines, you pay for it once and then you gradually pay it off. And once you pay it off, you're getting electricity for free. And then there is also no additional cost for fees. So a lot of companies admit fossil fuel emissions and CO2 emissions. And so the government, to try and limit this, does a carbon tax. And so renewables don't admit any bad side effects that affects the environment, so they won't be taxed that. And then there's also economic growth in transitioning because those renewable energy sources are more cost efficient. Then it's lower energy prices for companies and households, which increases disposable income, which they then put back into the economy, stimulating the economy. And then with that, so transitioning to renewable energy will benefit us socially, economically, and environmentally. And we can have a sustainable future if we reach for renewables. So you can go to the next slide. And with that, it concludes our presentations, and we will open it up for any questions.
Our code word is emissions on the bottom, if y'all didn't see that. Thank y'all.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Emilia, and Maddie. I appreciated learning more about renewable energy. You convinced me that that is the path forward for our future. And yes, as Maddie pointed out, that the code word was on that last slide. And also, I did just drop the rest of the code words into the chat for everyone. So if you want those other 4 code words, they're there for you for the taking. So thank you, ladies. Would you mind turning off your PowerPoint for now? Awesome, perfect, thank you. So yeah, I just, if anyone has questions in the chat, now is a great time to ask them. We did get one question during the presentation. It's kind of a tricky one. I'm not sure if you've looked into the question that I have here, but has anyone thought of like how like nuclear energy, the development of nuclear energy has also contributed to climate change? They're saying that the average temperature has increased ever since the nuclear age was developed. You know, what is the nuclear impact on climate change? We hear a lot about fossil fuels and such, but not much about nuclear energy.
Yeah, so I actually got a few questions about this during our Earth Day activity because a lot of people thought nuclear energy was a renewable resource. It kind of depends on what sources you're looking at. We went off of what the EPA had, and they don't consider nuclear energy to be a renewable resource. They consider it to be non-renewable. I don't know too much about the carbon dioxide emissions or greenhouse emissions and how it contributes to climate change with nuclear energy, but I know it has a huge waste problem and how to store it. There's toxic waste involved, but we just really focused on fossil fuel as we feel like that's a greater percentage of what's contributing to climate change, especially in the US. So we just had more of a focus on that.
Great, thank you, Maddie. I also know like a little bit about like nuclear. Yeah, I'm also not an expert on that as well. I do know that a lot of people kind of look at that as helping us start the transition towards renewable energy. So I do know that that is something that a lot of people are considering, but it certainly is not you know, gonna provide us with a fully sustainable future. Like what Maddie mentioned, the waste products from nuclear are really severe and they're really challenging to get rid of. So that's the big issue with nuclear. But yeah, so thank you for that question. Definitely appreciate it. So then the next question that I have is, Emilia, Gamez, as you were talking, you mentioned that oil and gas we're going to run out of that by 2047. So, you know, by my math, that's in 25 years, we're not going to have oil and gas. And currently we use oil and gas. It's the basis of our entire, you know, global economy. So like, what is that like going to look like? We have, you know, 25 years, oil and gas is going to run out. Is that going to be like in 25 years, we're going to wake up and suddenly we're going to have no oil and gas? Or like kind of what's that process going to kind of look like?
Yeah, I think it I think it was Stanford that maybe put it out that we're going to run out of oil and natural gas, and that's just because we use oil and natural gas much more than coal. I don't know if it's because we have so much oil and natural gas or just because we use it much more. And yeah, in my science class, we're actually going over energy and how much you think about it, how much it's used in everything. So you need fossil fuels, for example, in the agriculture industry, because we need nitrogen in our soil. And the process for that is kind of like using fossil fuels. So really, I mean, we're going to have to transition to pretty much every single sector can almost think of. And I think just starting now so we can, because we're going to run out in like 25 years, starting the process now and really going at a pretty fast rate, because we're going to have to, if we run out, you know, everything in our society is going to be impacted.
What about like, you know, it's like that 25 year time horizon. What about like kind of like the cost of oil and gas and those kind of things? You know, is it going to be like in 25 years, suddenly it's going to all, you know, we're not going to have it, so it's going to be super expensive towards the end, or is there going to be kind of a slow build up to that?
Probably just like a gradual increase in it until, you know, it's super expensive. And also probably the countries that have, for example, like Texas has a lot of natural gas. So we probably won't be affected as much for natural gas, but some of the countries that are dependent on getting those fossil fuels from other countries are going to suffer way more than we are. And it's going to be much more dramatic earlier on than it's going to be for us.
Definitely. So either way, we're going to be running out of these fossil fuels at some point. 25 years seems like, you know, kind of the timeline right now. So obviously we can't continue to use these forever, no matter what. Great, thank you. And then another thing that I was kind of looking at too, is just like a stat that really jumped out to me. You know, the Green New Deal is, you know, it's pretty expensive. You know, I can see why people would not want to fund that 50 to 90 trillion dollars. But I saw that annually was $446 billion. So why do you think it's important for us to invest, I guess, in the Green New Deal? Why should that price tag be something that I guess we're not so concerned about?
So definitely the Green New Deal will, like, the cost of it depends on what the decisions are made, like what policies are made. So that's why so many experts tell us it's too big to actually consider the full cost right now, because it all depends on the cost of it. But I definitely think that there are some things that should be implemented, that they include like investing in communities of color, because we also need to remind it that it's not just about stopping like CO2 emissions, but also helping the communities that are most affected by it. So I think definitely like the policies that have to do with helping like the communities of color, like they should definitely like be set, and because it all is linked, like climate change and how inequality, it's all linked together.
Great, yeah, thank you. And I mean, and I agree. When you see that annual price tag, and you know, that's probably a conservative estimate, because we don't know how much natural disasters are going to increase, how much they're going to cost. I think it's really important that we take like proactive steps. You know, typically we're very reactive, so I think being proactive is really important. So we're getting towards the end of our talk here, and you know, renewables are definitely the answer, the solution for us to have a sustainable future. And that's something that does give me hope for the future. And I want to leave, like, I want to conclude us all with a bit more kind of positivity. So I'm curious, you know, one thing that gives me hope every day is getting to work with great students like the three of you. What gives you hope that we can have a sustainable future?
I think just seeing that so many people are passionate about sustainability, like everyone that came to this talk, like wanted to learn more and see how we can create a more sustainable future. So I think just getting to work with other people who share the same passion is what makes me hopeful for the future. So yeah.
Great, thank you, Maddie.
I would agree with that, and especially I think seeing like our generation, like young people, really trying to look out for their own future is really, really cool, because you know, we're young and we still think we can have a massive impact. So that gives me hope. I like seeing that.
Great, thank you, Emilia.
And for me, I'm not usually much of an optimist, to be honest. Like, I have to put it out there. But I see, especially Tuesday during Earth Day, I saw like so many people are coming up to us and they were talking, oh, like what can we do? Like, how can we help out? And I thought that was just so amazing, because they were so, like, you could see the passion in their eyes, like you see they can help out. And honestly, that made me a little bit more hopeful.
Great. Well, I'm really glad to hear that you had a good experience on Tuesday. That makes me also want to thank anyone here who came out and visited us on Tuesday. I know a lot of you have been very loyal supporters of all the stuff we've been doing. So definitely thank you for that. With that, this is, getting into the end here. Let me just share my screen. We do actually have one last event that you can participate in to get some code words. There's 5 remaining code words, and that is actually tomorrow. We're doing the Sustainability Awards breakfast, and it will be virtually streamed as well. So if you want to join us tomorrow at 8:30, there was a campus-wide email that went out that did have a direct link to that talk. We will also have 5 code words at that event, and we will also put it on YouTube for that one code word if you're not able to catch it live. We definitely hope to see you there. So that concludes our virtual talks for this year with our student virtual talks. And again, you have that one last chance to get code words tomorrow. You can put all of those into an email. You have until I think it was April 27th to get all those turned in, to send them all in one email to sustainability.tamu.edu. And thank you all so much for your support. Great to see all of you. And remember, together we can save ourselves. So get out there, let's make a sustainable future. Bye, everyone.